Soft bells murmur across the dark canvas of pre-dawn London, and you drift into our corner of candlelit calm. Welcome, dear listener, to Bedtime Historica, your quiet refuge where history dons flannel slippers, settles beside you, and whispers through the curtains of time. If our wanderings through the past cradle your thoughts as gently as we hope, do consider tapping a sleepy thumbs up or subscribing. It helps us keep the ink flowing and the embers glowing. No rush, of course. Let the notion rest beside you like a mug cooling on the nightstand. For now, nestle deeper into the pillows, slow your breathing, and allow the river fog of Tudor London to curl around your imagination. The sky over the Thames is a velvet charcoal just beginning to soften at its edges. You arrive upon its slippery embankment as if in the hush between heartbeats, a faint briny scent mingling with wood smoke and damp wool. In this fragile half-light of 1558, the city is still more medieval than modern, its southern skyline bristling with the cranes of new wharves and the unfinished fingers of St. Paul's Tower. A barge glides past, oars dipping in sleepy rhythm. The water slaps the hull with the quiet cluck of a hen fussing over straw. Somewhere upriver, a cockerel decides the sun has been tardy long enough and offers a ragged reveille. You draw your cloak tighter. Coarse, scratchy homespun, dyed the grey-brown of boiled walnut husks, and feel the morning's clammy chill seep through the seams. A bead of trepidation joins the dew on your brow, because you're not merely visiting. You're here to survive a full Tudor day, and already the odds are frowning. London's population hovers near 100,000 souls. Plague visits almost yearly, and clean water is a rumour most citizens keep chasing with wine, ale, or weak, small beer. Your purse contains a single silver groat, 4p, roughly one labourer's daily wage, though bread this week costs a swollen halfpenny a loaf, thanks to a poor harvest in Kent. A fleeting pang of gratitude flutters through you. At least you arrived after the Statute of Artificers, which anchors wages and working hours. 8p might buy a decent dinner. 4p leaves you dancing on the edge of hunger. Yet dawn offers small mercies. Mist conceals the refuse strewn along the river stairs. Fish guts, shaved oak curls, fragments of rush matting tossed out with last night's dishwater. You step carefully to avoid a slick patch. London Bridge's latrine chutes empty just upstream, and slipping here might baptize you in things the city would rather forget. As the grey lifts to pewter, and then to tarnished silver, you follow the day's first tide of apprentices hurrying to Cheapside. Their felted caps, many emblazoned with the badge of a guildmaster, bob like mushrooms after rain. You quicken your stride, because tardy apprentices risk fines, or a taste of master's discipline delivered by Willow Rod. The smells along New Fish Street grow heartier, barrels of salted cod stacked like fat rolled carpets, baskets of eels squirming among damp rushes, and a faint whiff of juniper from a cook shop boiling breakfast pottage. Your stomach registers interest. Outside St. Mary Woolnoth, a ragged woman sells ribbons of turnip skin fried in dripping, a copper farthing each. The oil hisses as you approach, and she greets you with the wary smile of one who knows hunger's kinship. You part with a quarter of your daily capital, bite into the salty crispness, and feel warmth thread its way from tongue to fingertips. Overhead, a swoop of swift stitches black arcs across a sky now flushed lavender. Midway to the shambles, the butcher's district, you pass the whipping post where, only last week, a cloth dealer was tied for re-grating, buying up wool in Dorset, carting it to London, and reselling at twice the price. His back bore 8 stripes, each a scarlet sermon on the virtue of fair dealing. A constable adjusts the manacles, humming a psalm in minor key. Judicial pain here is public theatre. The audience learns the moral before their bread cools. The 9 o'clock bell tolls from St. Paul's like an iron spoon tapping a great pewter jug, and the city heaves into brisk motion. You venture into the roaring artery of Eastcheap Market, where pigs squeal under straw-padded yokes, geese flap in cages, and sellers bawl prices in a dialect peppered with French grafts and Saxon roots. The ink of the 1552 Acts of Common Council is barely dry, mandating that butchers move their offal beyond city walls, lest the stench offend God, or at least the alderman, but disobedience lingers in the gutter. Blood channels trickle sluggishly beside your boots. You must step lively. Each splash risks fleas, which risk plague, which in 1543 claimed nearly 1 in 7 Londoners. At a stall of spiced buns, glossy with honey and studded with currants, a young baker in soot-smeared doublet boasts, 2 a penny, fresh from the peel. You consider. Sugar lies far beyond your purse, imported from Madeira at ruinous tariffs, but the bun's gentle sweetness is a minor luxury, perhaps later. For now, you barter your smile for a whiff, inhaling flavor enough to perfume your thoughts for hours. A troupe of French glassmakers, granted special license by Mary I to practice their craft despite guild protests, balances bundles of fragile green goblets on reed mats. One slips. The crash rings bright as a bell, shards glinting like frozen dragonflies. The nearest apprentice winces. Every break garners a docked wage, and a single goblet fetches near 12p when whole. You murmur silent sympathy and move on, your own 4p feeling dangerously mortal in comparison. By midday, the sun, filtered through city smoke, paints Cheapside in pale brass. Hunger curls again. You duck into the cool dimness of a cookshop near Paternoster Row, where trenchers of yesterday's bread serve as edible plates. The house specialty is white broth, chicken simmered with ground almonds, priced at 3 halfpence the bowl. That, alas, you cannot afford. You settle for pottage thickened with barley, its stew of leeks and parsley seasoned with the faint tang of pennyroyal. As you spoon your portion, the innkeeper, red-faced and flour-dusted, leans in conspiratorially. "Trade's up," he mutters. "The Queen's new coinage looks sound. Folks spend when they trust the silver." You nod sagely, though economics to you feels as arcane as alchemy. Still, it is true. The debasement scandals of Henry VIII had shaken faith. Elizabeth will soon call in the base coins, but that news has yet to crackle through tavern rumour. Across the room, a courier from Berwick, uniform torn and boots flaked in mud, dozes upright. A patched document pouch rests on his lap. Wax seals bear the Lion of Scotland's crown. Even in slumber, he clutches his charge. The northern border stirs with whispers of French alliance and Protestant revolt. Letters outrun rumour, and rumour outruns itself. After scraping the last shallot from your trencher, you gather courage to step back into the glare. The streets, now dry of morning dew, exhale dust. You cough, tasting something gritty, perhaps char from yesterday's hearth fires, or powdered horse manure, or the raw clay of unseen construction. Hygiene is a prickly concept here. Chamber pots empty nightly with a warning cry, "Gardy-loo!" But midday brings no such courtesy. If you pause too long under a window, you may find yourself christened in last night's ale turned urine. Your next stop is a carpenter's yard near St. Olave's, for rumour says they hire day labour at 4p, plus an onion supper. You angle through lanes so narrow moonlight cannot visit, past walls hung with bundles of rosemary, city ordnance to mask privy smells in public ways. Children swarm, barefoot and quick, playing hot cockles, their laughter weaving between alleys like ribbon. A boy pauses to flog a top carved from hazel. The blur hums against the cobbles, and his grin is a lantern of missing teeth. You smile back, feeling, against reason, almost safe. The carpenter's yard greets you with a vinegar tang of fresh-cut oak and hot pitch. Sawdust drifts in lazy spirals, catching sunbeams like summer snow. Master Felton, square as the beam he leans upon, inspects you. "Hands?" he demands. You extend them, soft, ink-stained rather than calloused. He huffs. Need stout fellows who can lift a joist, nay scribes who quote Cato. Rejection stings, but you bow thanks, dust on your tongue. Unemployment here is not a gentle void. Idlers risk arrest under the Vagabonds Act, branded with a V on the chest, fed on crusts, and sold for 2 years' service to whoever claims them. You step briskly away, lest your inactivity sprout suspicion. Past Bread Street the air thickens with yeasty warmth. Bakers draw wheaten loaves from beehive ovens, cracking crusts with wooden paddles. You count 3 pennies left, feel their weight as though the coins grow heavier with each choice denied. An elderly matron tends a stall of gooseberries dusted in cane sugar, a rarity fetched from Bristol docks. She sings in a voice as thin as vellum, 1 for taste, 2 for sin, 3 for pockets, light as skin. You laugh softly, buy none, and continue. In an adjacent alley, the odour shifts. Lanolin, urine, and mordant alum combine where fullers trample wool in waist-high vats. A journeyman, stockings rolled, stamps cloth with methodical squelches, his calves striped in drying suds. You gag politely. He raises a foamy hand in salute. The guild rulebook, thick as a psalter, decrees VAT hours, dye recipes, apprentice terms. Break them, and the city livery courts may fine you a fortnight's wage, or strip your dais at the annual procession. Guild pride here is currency deeper than sterling. By late afternoon, the sky wears a pewter frown as clouds gather from the west. Thunder rumbles faintly, like a cart over distant cobbles. You seek shelter in St. Paul's nave, free, echoing, cool. Candles flicker along the choir screen. Incense hangs like breath suspended. Merchants whisper deals beneath the arches where once only prayers rose. A scholar in dusty robes recites Erasmus to a bored cat, Latin vowels dripping like honey. You sit on a bench worn smooth by centuries of knees and almost drift to sleep. But a verger strides by, staff clacking. No lodgers, he warns, eyes soft though voice stern. You rise, joints creaking. Outside, raindrops stipple the yard, raising the earthy scent of wet limestone. You wrap your cloak close. The wool now smells faintly of the fry-oil turnip skins, and turn toward Smithfield, where evening cattle markets bloom under stormy skies. The journey north carries you along Fleet Ditch, a sluggish ribbon of refuse. Rain polishes the sheen on its scum, releasing a chorus of odours, rotted cabbage, tallow scrapings, and the faint metallic tang of blood from nearby slaughterhouses. You swallow hard. Disease loves a damp host. In 1557, sweating sickness felled hundreds in days, many along this very ditch. You quicken pace, boots slipping on mossy stone. At Smithfield, pens rattle with lowing beasts. Drovers in leather jerkins crack willow wands, urging oxen toward buyers who pinch flank and haggle. A prime beef fetches 30 shillings. Spectacular wealth beside your shrinking purse. Lightning spiderwebs the sky. Thunder follows, a deep, rolling sermon. Sellers cover goods with oiled cloth. The market becomes a hive in panic. You duck under the eaves of a tanner's shed, heart thrumming to the storm's drum. The tanner, eyes soft like winter mud, offers you a cup of thin ale. You pay a farthing, sip, and taste rain clouds in the brew's young fizz. When the downpour eases to a sighing drizzle, dusk drapes the city in indigo. Shutters clap shut. Lanterns wink to life, fueled by tallow that sputters with every wet gust. You head southward, toward Southwark, where the night promises both revelry and risk. Crossing London Bridge, its 19 arches spanning water that gurgles like hungry teeth, you pass shops built right upon its stone spine, apothecaries, grocers, even a tiny chapel glowing with votive light. The river below snarls around starlings of island debris, determined to carry all it can to the sea. Midway across, you pause by a niche where traitors' heads once spiked on iron rods. The last was Thomas Wyatt, quartered for rebellion. Now only iron stains remain, but the sight prickles your nape. On the southern bank, Fiddlers lure crowds into alehouses, promising song, dice, and perhaps the wink of clandestine affection. Taverns there answer to looser municipal oversight. Bishop Bonner's moral patrol seldom ventures so far, yet your coins jingle lamely. 2 pennies stand between you and destitution. You choose instead the shadowed porch of St. Saviour's, where pilgrims often rest. Rain lullabies the eaves. You exhale fog and fatigue. Night deepens, and with it, London's more jagged edges protrude. A watchman's lantern, bobbing like a captured firefly, illuminates puddles the colour of tarnished brass. He calls the hour. 10 of the clock, and all's well, though footpads test that claim beyond the spill of his light. To linger outdoors invites suspicion. Curfew is a thing of overlapping statutes, loosely enforced yet dangerous in moodier seasons. You trudge toward a common lodging on Borough High Street, where for a penny you may share straw with strangers. The keeper, a woman with arms like knotted rope, eyes your cloak for lice, demands payment up front, then pushes you into a loft thick with human breath. Sleeping forms rustle on shared pallets. Someone coughs, wet and ragged. You squeeze onto a patch of straw, tucking your purse deep within your doublet lining. The roof leaks in 2 steady streams. You shuffle to avoid them, end up wedged between a snoring mason and a boy who mutters French in fever dreams. Exhaustion settles like warm lead upon your limbs. You close your eyes, mind woozy with the sense of damp straw, unwashed bodies, and lingering wood smoke that clings to everything like memory. Tomorrow waits beyond the thinning veil of sleep, with its fresh gauntlet of noise, bargains, and the perennial gamble of health. But for now, as the rain hushes to a gentle tap, and even the restless horses in the yard fall still, you surrender to the dark, hoping that dawn's bell will find you breathing, purse intact and unblemished by either branding iron or plague boil. In Tudor London, that alone would be an enviable triumph. A rasping snore soars through the low rafters of the loft, pulling you back from the edge of dreaming, just as surely as a steeple bell. 2 pulses of rainwater strike the floor like a metronome. Drip, drip, pause, drip. Your eyelids drift upward. Without windows, the darkness is thick and grainy, like charcoal rubbed across vellum. Somewhere below, a wine-sodden groom retches into a bucket, punctuating the night with a sound equal parts despair and sour grapes. You take a trembling breath and remind yourself that this too is London living, private hardship conducted in public company. The straw beneath you crackles each time you shift. Its perfume is faintly sweet, last summer's hay, but it's threaded with odd prickles you can't identify in the dark. After a few minutes, the identity reveals itself. Flea bites, each one flaring in slow succession, mapping your calves like a constellation of smouldering stars. You scratch, then will yourself still. Movement only agitates the straw and wakes the next soul. A constable's horn blares somewhere beyond the shutterboards, announcing the half-hour past midnight and calling the watch to change posts. The horn's tone is flat, almost exhausted, yet it carries farther than the man's footfall. Night watchmen in this quarter are paid 6pence a night, decent coin, but they make up the difference by encouraging tips from any respectable citizen caught wandering after curfew. You are grateful for the inn's patched door and the hook jammed through its staple. Soon, the collective breathing turns rhythmic again, a single organism made of 30 strangers dozing cheek to cheek. Outside, the drizzle peters to a hush so complete you hear the ticking of rainwater dripping from a gutter chain against a flagstone. A rat scrabbles across a beam overhead, nails skittering like a child's dance. You clench your remaining pennies tighter in one fist, the cold metal grounding you in reality's narrow economy. You can't afford a cut purse tonight. Your mind, heavy yet unsettled, drifts to the morrow. You must eat, find employment, and still spare a farthing or two for lodging, lest you become an illegal vagrant. As sleep finally seduces you again, Your last waking thought is oddly domestic. Would tomorrow's pottage taste of turnip tops or cabbage cores? Neither is enticing, but each promises a different shade of survival. A cock crows too close to the window boards at what must be the thin edge of dawn. The loft erupts into muted chaos, yawns, stretches, muttered curses. The boy beside you blinks sweat from his brow, fever broken, and asks in a reed-thin voice whether it is Sunday, hoping perhaps to skip an apprenticeship shift. You reassure him it is Wednesday, and his shoulders droop in resignation. No rest for him, nor for you. Down the narrow stair, the keeper ladles a thin gruel of oats, onion peel, and goose fat into dented pewter bowls. Price, 1 halfpenny. You trade a coin and accept the breakfast, warmth soaking up your fingers through the metal. The taste is smoky and faintly sweet, as though yesterday's candle stubs had been melted into the cauldron, but you finish every drop. Calories are currency, waste a sin. In the yard behind the inn, dawn spreads a pale gold wash across puddles peppered with straw. Horse breath ghosts on the air. A drover loads ale casks onto a cart bound for Queen Hythe. The cooper's chalk scrawl declares the brew at 1 penny the quart. You're tempted to inquire after work, but drovers hire by the week, not the day, and they prefer men with boots, and you spy 3 bare toes sprouting from your left shoe. Instead, you hitch cloak and stride northward toward the bridge once more, hungry for opportunity. The early morning river scene is a masterclass in brisk coordination. Wherrymen cluster like crows at a plough, hawking passage across the Thames for a halfpenny per soul. Their doublets are tarred at the seams, waterproofed against perpetual splash. You board a skiff whose owner swears he rows straight as the bishop's morals, which, considering recent heresy trials, is not the comfort he thinks. Still, the fare is low, and your legs grateful. As the oar dips, water courses silver around its blade, and the current reveals its strength beneath. The upstream smell of tanneries mingles with morning bread, bass notes of lye and bark, high notes of yeast and cumin. Midstream, the chill wind stiffens your cheeks. Gulls wheel overhead, pale bellies glowing like lantern glass. The wherryman talks to fill the crossing, offering gossip in exchange for a listening ear. He tells you Blackfriars Theatre may install movable scenery, like the Italians do, with canopies sliding on ropes. He chuckles at the thought. Actors demanding privacy to change costumes. Why, in my father's day, they swapped breeches behind the curtain and prayed no one peeked. You nod politely, though playhouses are luxuries far beyond your purse. Still, it is pleasant to hear about art when most of life is arithmetic. How much bread? How many hours? How few coins? The skiff noses Cheapside stairs, and you disembark among baskets of spring onions freshly unloaded from a Surrey farm. Vendors sprinkle droplets on the stalks to keep them crisp, though the water, drawn from the Thames only minutes ago, carries its own ecosystem. You sidestep a lapdog in a red velvet collar, trotting after its mistress. Dogs of certain breeds are exempt from the dog whipper's rope. Privilege, it seems, extends even to spaniels. Cheapside already hums with trade. A cutler demonstrates a new clasp knife whose handle conceals a tiny file. He claims sailors swear by it when caught in rigging. Price, 7 pence. Beyond him, a seamstress displays garters embroidered with pious slogans to circumvent moral bans on decorative trim. The city fathers decree modest attire, yet fashion always squirms through the legal net. One garter reads, "Think on death," another, "Fear God." Ironically, either would pair nicely with a silk stocking at a dance. You duck into the throng surrounding a notice board nailed to the pillory's frame. Broadsheets hang, ink shiny against rough paper. One offers day labour at Bridewell Palace for carpenters repairing the roof. Pay, 4 pence a day, board included. Bridewell, once a royal residence, now serves as a house of correction, where petty criminals weave textile or grind rags for paper. Yet the advertisement is legal. The city contracts free men to keep the building watertight. You note the direction, Fleet Street Gate, dawn muster, and feel a spark of hope. A bell clangs close by. Heads turn. The sheriff's men march a pickpocket to the stocks, rope binding his wrists. He is young, cheeks still soft with summer down, eyes wide as saucers. His crime, lifting a woman's purse in St. Martin's porch yesterday. Punishment, 2 hours in the stocks, ears nailed if he tears himself free. An apprentice throws a rotten apple, but the sheriff waves him off until the formal sentence is read by clerks. Wording must be recited precisely to satisfy justice. You slip away before the crowd's indignation escalates. Public punishment visits a strange exhilaration on spectators, and stones sometimes follow fruit. By mid-morning, the sun brightens, dust rising like incense. You proceed to Fleet Street, dodging a sedan chair, whose bearers curse everyone slower than a trot. Cathedral spires recede behind tiled roofs, sporting rows of chimney pots. Smoke from soft coal coils upward. It is still cheaper than orphaned firewood, though physicians warn it blackens lungs. No one listens. Air is free, fuel expensive. At Farringdon within ward, you find Bridewell's brick gate yawning open. A bailiff the size of a wardrobe eyes your thin arms. "Carry timber?" he asks. 2 joists each span, no slacking. You nod fervently. Work means food. He directs you to sign a ledger with your mark, an awkward X, and hands you a wooden token inscribed BR2. Your shift begins. Inside the yard, men sweat under joists, passing lengths of greenish oak along human chains. Some are inmates, faces sallow. Others, free labor like yourself. Overseers separate the groups by tunic color. Prisoners wear russet, freemen slate grey. The roofers above call for beams. Each weighs near 8 stone, and the climb wears your untrained muscles raw. But you grit teeth, remembering the bailiff's coin. At noon, a horn signals pause. Bread ration, a hunk you could almost hide in your palm, and half a pint of small beer arrive in wooden bowls. You devour both. Small beer, low alcohol, is safer than water. Barley boiled and fermented kills the worst of the Thames. The beer tastes faintly of straw and lemon balm. You drink it like ambrosia. Conversations spark around you. A locksmith from Shoreditch, also day labour, complains about new sumptuary draft laws, forbidding his wife to wear taffeta. "How shall she show success?" he grumbles. A prisoner stacking timber interrupts with dry humour. "Success, good sir, is breathing in the Queen's peace. Everything else is lace." Laughter ripples, bridging status. For a moment the yard feels almost fraternal. Work resumes. Clouds gather, but no rain falls. Only a hush of humidity that clings like an extra shirt. Splinters mark your palms. They sting, then numb. You learn to lift with legs, to pivot when shoulders burn. Time becomes pulses of exertion and short gulps of breath. At length, late afternoon sun slants, painting the yard a butterscotch hue. Overseers clap hands. Shift done. The bailiff collects tokens, slapping a copper groat into each palm. 4 pennies, glittering as if sun-forged. You exhale relief so profound it nearly topples you. With coin secured, you slip through Bridewell's gate and join traffic westbound. Dinner calls. On Fleet Bridge, a fishwife hawks hot eels pressed into pastry. Price, 1 penny. You indulge, biting flaky crust so rich it leaves your lips gleaming. The eel's meat is soft, almost creamy, seasoned with pepper and parsley. Pepper prices have fallen since Portuguese carracks doubled imports. Still costly, but within reach for vendors to dust sparingly. Flavour floods you with a joy that feels indecently large for such a small pie. You keep walking, hoping gentle exercise prevents cramps. The evening glow burnishes St. Bride's steeple in molten gold, then dims as you pass into lanes shadowed by tall timber houses. Candle smoke weaves through shutters, mingling with frying lard and the faintest thread of rosewater from a perfumer's shop. The hour bell of St. Dunstan strikes 6. Somewhere inside the tower, a mechanical clock with 2 iron figures beats a bell. Londoners call them Michael and Jacobus. Children count each clang as entertainment cheaper than puppets. You pause to listen, heart aligning with the rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Your plan is simple. Secure a bed and conserve 2 pennies for tomorrow's breakfast and fees. But temptation stands at street corners like a painted dancer. The savoury smell of roasted chestnuts, the chorus of minstrels practising for a parish fair, the flash of dice tumbling across a cloth on a barrel head. You dodge these lures, repeating to yourself the bailiff's stern face. 2 joists, no slacking, 4pence paid. Lax choices now undo toil. Still, entertainment can be free. Near St. Andrew's, a crowd forms a wide ring around a physician extolling his miracle tonic, distilled from wormwood, nettle, and a jewel ground finer than bread flour. He claims it cures scurvy, ague, and heartbreak. His assistant raises a jar of cloudy wine, and 2 skeptics step forward. One is coaxed to drink, and his grimace explains enough. But the speech continues, laced with Latin, as opaque as the tonic. You chuckle, slip through the ring's opposite side, and leave the physician to his theatre. Night slides in at a leisurely pace, like a cat stretching across paving stones still radiating day warmth. Torches flare, hissing when rain spatters briefly from a passing shower. You divert south to the Stews area, a red-light district across the Thames, if only to witness its bawdy pageant from a safe distance. Lanterns painted crimson sway above doorways. Laughter, low and feline, pools in recesses between buildings. City fathers officially banned these houses 2 reigns ago, yet regulation beats prohibition. Each stewholder now pays fines to the Bishop of Winchester, whose diocese covers Southwark. Hence, locals dub the prostitutes Winchester geese. A moral maze indeed. You stand long enough to note customers, sailors with weather-cracked skin, law students in black gowns, and even a gentleman wearing a silk hood to hide identity. Commerce seldom sleeps in London, but you do not cross the threshold. 1 penny buys time, but also buys risk. Syphilis, the great pox, spreads covertly. Victims often sport rotting noses disguised with perfumed pomanders. You turn away, swallowing a shiver not entirely from chill. Across the Borough Road, a bear-baiting arena prepares for tomorrow's spectacle. Through plank gaps, you glimpse handlers chaining a bear to a central post. Dogs snarl from crates, the promise of blood thickening the air more than fog ever could. Admission will be a penny. Even Queen Elizabeth sometimes sponsors these shows, though Puritans denounce them as cruelty. You retreat quickly, step silent. The bear's resigned huff follows like a bad dream. Instead, you head for St. George's Parish alehouse, rumoured cheap and calm. The signboard shows a roasted goose holding a tankard, likely a pun you don't grasp. Inside, rushlight candles gutter, and the floor is strewn with fresh mint to blunt odours. A bard strums a gitton softly, filling pauses between heartbeats. You order single brew ale at a farthing a cup, weak but warming. The bartender's eyes flick to your hands and provide a nod. He recognizes splinters, knows a worker's thirst. 2 seats over, a clothier debates a Rhenish wine importer on price caps recently mooted by the Privy Council. If they fix price, smugglers thrive, says the importer, and we starve. The clothier counters, if they don't fix prices, wage men can't afford woolen hose. We starve. Their civil argument sharpens without ever raising voices, a Tudor duel waged in footnotes and percentages. You enjoy the glow of informed dispute, sipping ale so lightly, hopped it tastes like bread crust soaked in water. When your cup is drained, you push away from the bench, coins intact save a halfpenny. The barkeep offers straw lodging in the tap room for another halfpenny, but you politely decline. Instead, You brave the street to return to last night's loft. Familiarity now feels like security. Wind from the west carries a promise of storm yet unspent. Clouds chase moonlight across roof lines, throwing alleys into chiaroscuro. You step over a sleeping hog tethered near a butcher, skirt a puddle reflecting warped stars. London glitters with 1,000 household tapers, yet most road stretches remain dark as a miser's imagination. You keep to the middle of the lane, ready to run should footpads emerge, but luck holds. The loft door stands ajar, wedge missing. Your pulse leaps. Inside, the keeper argues with a constable. Apparently, a travelling cutler was robbed during the day, and suspicion now casts its net over everyone indoors. You join the cluster of lodgers producing purses for inspection. Yours, containing 3 intact pennies and 1 halfpenny, passes muster. The constable grunts approval, but warns that in some parishes, theft warrants branding on the cheek or hanging under the Theft Act of Henry VIII if value tops a shilling. The stolen goods, a dozen bone-handled knives worth 8p, enough to warrant nailing ears. The night's chill finds a sharper edge. Order restored, lodgers climb the ladder to the straw loft. Positions claimed yesterday are claimed again. Humans, like cats, memorialize warm spots. You nestle by the fever-recovered boy, now cooler to the touch, and offer him a sip from a flask of water purchased at the alehouse. 2 mites, nearly free. He smiles, gratitude shining like candlelight. Moments later, sleep folds over the 2 of you, as soft and unstoppable as tidewater under the bridge. Morning breaks pale and ruthless. You wake sore but exhilarated. You still possess 3 pennies, a whole new day ahead, and the prospect of steady work if the roof project lasts. Better, your stomach does not gnaw. Eel pastry lingers in memory like a lullaby's refrain. Outside, the Thames ballooned overnight. Rain upstream has swollen its belly. Wherrymen warn of strong current, raising fares to 1 penny and 1 farthing. Instead, you choose land, a mile's walk along Queenhithe Wharf to Bridewell. Mist clings to warehouse eaves, each droplet reflecting sunrise. Porters unload barrels of Bordeaux, import duty 6 shillings a ton, a lucrative revenue for the Crown. 1 barrel slips, crashes, and splits red juice across planks. A cheer rises. Quick-thinking men cup hands to sip spilled wine, theft by mouthful. A harried customs officer shouts threats of pillory, yet few heed him. Near Blackfriars, a Dominican friar preaches temperance atop an overturned crate, quoting St. Augustine between shouts. Passers-by pretend rapt attention until he mentions almsgiving. Then, pockets develop sudden holes. You drop a mite, 1/8 of a penny, partly in pity, partly insurance against moral misfortune. The friar blesses you with a sign of the cross large enough for heaven to notice. Bridewell Yard greets you with orchestral noise, hammer on anvil, saw on wood, shouts threading between. Today, overseers assign you to shingle duty, carrying bundles of wooden roof tiles up ladders. Each bundle weighs near your body's measure. Legs protest. You focus on small details, the pattern of cedar grain, the way tar warms in sunlight, the salty sting when sweat tracks into a raw splinter wound. Noon bread arrives thicker than yesterday, with a wedge of hard cheese smelling faintly of straw. Luxury. You savor slow nibbles, mouth-watering as the cheese softens. Nearby, a prisoner sings a work song about Norfolk fields. Melody drifts upward like incense. During rest, you trade gossip with a mason. Word spreads that the Queen's Council considers imposing a blanket census to tally men fit for militia, fearful of Spanish invasion. "They'll count our teeth next," the mason jokes, flashing a grin missing 3. You laugh and inhale a splinter. Coughs convulse your chest. Water helps, and soon laughter returns, albeit gentler. Work ends under clearer skies. Overseers deliver fresh groats. You cradle coins like tiny sons. 8p saved in 2 days. Room to breathe. You vow to treat yourself to a bathhouse visit. For a penny, steam and a scrape may remove fleas before they draw maps on your skin. But first, you crave fresh air unmarred by sawdust. You pace north toward Moorfields, the city's lungs where open grass invites kites, both avian and wooden. The walk takes you through Bishopsgate, where Flemish weavers run shops selling lace so delicate it resembles frost. Sumptuary laws restrict such finery to the wealthy. Still, you stare at a collar displayed on blue velvet. Price? A guinea, perhaps. Hard to imagine. The weaver sees your admiration, offers a warm nod rather than disdain. You move on, lighter for his courtesy. Near the city wall, Moorfields opens like a sigh. Geese graze in lazy clusters, and washerwomen beat linens at marshy puddles, humming to set rhythm. You sit on a fallen log, stretch aching arms. The grass smells of rain and young clover. A physician passes, collecting leeches in a jar. He explains politely they treat amiable imbalances of blood. You smile, though you keep your ankles well away from his pocket. Relaxation lasts minutes. A group of boys playing at quarterstaff ask if you will judge their tourney. You agree, appointing the tallest as marshal. They clack poles, sparks of joy in every swing. The victor, a freckled lad no older than 12, receives your imaginary laurel and a crumb of cheese saved from lunch. His grin could light a hearth. As sun tilts west, you remember the bathhouse. The nearest hothouse sits off Coleman Street, a timber building painted whitewashed lime. Within, benches line a brick floor above glowing embers that heat stones. Entry, 1 penny. You hand coin to a bathwoman who eyes you for disease, then gestures to a peg for cloak and boots. Steam billows, tasting of rosemary branches laid upon the coals. You seat yourself, muscles applauding each drip of sweat ferrying grime outward. A barber in a leather apron offers to scrape your skin with a blunt knife. Additional halfpenny, but you decline. His blade seems older than common sense. Instead, you ladle warm water mixed with basil onto arms, watching rivulets run black, then clear. Minutes melt. Emerging, you dress in damp yet, miracle, less odorous garments. A glance down reveals new red welts, where fleas once bit, but fewer are alive to bite again. You whisper thanks to St. Luke, patron of physicians, and step into golden dusk. Hunger prickles, but coin remains. Tonight you afford meat. At a pie seller's stall near Leadenhall, you purchase a mutton pie fragrant with mace. Cost, 2 pennies. The crust is sturdy enough to double as a utensil. You crack it and suck juices before they scald chin. Mutton, raised on Sussex downs and driven to city on bleeding hooves, tastes of heather and far hills. You chew slowly, each bite invitation to slow the entire world. The seller, cheeks dimpled, hands swift, tells you her nephew apprenticed with the musicians' company, hoping to play for banquets at Hampton Court. You wish him luck, mouth full. She winks. Talent earns bread, patronage earns feasts. Pie finished, you cross Cornhill where a bookseller clears stall for the night. He offers broadsheets at a discount. Yesterday's news sells cheap. For a farthing, you buy one titled True Relation of a Monstrous Fish Caught at Limehouse. The engraving shows a whale, though rumour suggests merely a sturgeon, but the reading will amuse tomorrow's break. You tuck paper into doublet. Night again creeps, though gentler than the first. Lanterns flicker amber, wink in draughts, casting halos on puddles. With 4pence remaining, you opt for a proper bed. A penny buys a space in a dormitory above a guild orphanage. Clean straw, thick blanket, shuttered windows. At the door, a matron checks hair for nits and dabs wrists with lavender water, policy against contagion. You feel almost regal. Inside, rows of pallets host dozing travellers. Air smells of soap, rare, wondrous. You settle, let blanket cradle limbs, and read your broadsheet by moon filtering through cracked pane. The exaggerations amuse until eyes blur. As you drift, you rehearse tomorrow's plan. Return to Bridewell, earn another groat, perhaps buy a pair of used stockings at Newgate Market. You picture your future self striding with heels snug in wool, toes unseen. Then thought softens into dream. The sturgeon leaps from water, wearing lace collar, brandishing a roof joist like a knight's lance, and you laugh even as dream. You calculates duty owed on fish of noble birth. Soft breaths surround you, harmonizing with distant church bells marking 10 of the clock. Tonight, you lie unbruised by thieves, nourished by meat, an honest wage folded under blanket's edge. In brutal, beautiful Tudor London, you have done more than last a day. You have lived it richly, tasted its grit and honey, and laid your head upon its sighing heartbeat. Sleep now. Tomorrow waits with fresh splinters, fresh coins, and perhaps, if fate blinks kindly, fresh bread spiced not with survival alone, but with the quiet courage you carry in your slowing pulse. Let the city's murmurs dissolve into lullaby, and yield, at last, to rest. A charcoal hush still clings to the rafters when a sparrow, bold as any town crier, lands on the dormitory's warped window ledge and taps at the pane with a beak the size of a barley kernel. Tap, pause, tap, tap. Its small insistence is enough to riffle your lashes open. The air in the room lies cool and pleasantly bland, lavender from last night's inspection still wavering like a half-remembered psalm, masking the habitual musk of bodies, wool, and slow-drying stockings that hang from peg rails across the beams. You draw one deliberate breath, feeling ribs rise against blanket's weight, then another, slower, until the world steadies into morning. A matron below stairs rings a handbell, 3 brisk chimes that bounce up the stairwell. Breakfast. Feet scuff boards. Murmured greetings glide over snores reluctant to surrender. You roll to sitting and count your coins. 4 pennies, 1 mite, before tucking them back against your skin, warm now from night's shared heat. Down in the refectory, a kettle of barley water scatters soft clouds of steam. The matron drops in sprigs of marjoram to cheer the blood. Bowls wait, shallow pewter, beside a board holding oat loaves fissured like miniature valleys. The porridge costs a halfpenny, and to your gratitude comes with a thumb-sized knob of salted butter melting into slow golden galaxies across the surface. You swallow spoonfuls as church bells eastward at St. Mary Axe toll 4 of the clock, Tudor reckoning, roughly 7 a modern mind would mark, and the day, already stirring, stretches its limbs. On Cheapside, the stalls bloom early. Goose feather quills shine under dawn's amber edge. Lengths of Devonshire wool, dyed madder red, hang in lapping folds that ripple when a wind snakes through the arcade. A guild herald in a tawny mantle clips a notice to the conduit post. This St. George's Eve shall be kept a watch, and midsummer fires lit. You remember the calendar, June's final days, when Londoners, hungry for shortening nights and long ales, kindle bonfires at crossroads, dance until sparks fade to grey pearls, and let children roll blazing cartwheels downhill to mimic the turning sun. The vision brightens inside you like a lantern. Perhaps you will still be here to witness it, if purse and health conspire. First, however, there is timber yet to carry. You skirt poultry cages, where speckled hens fuss, and sidle down Fleet Street toward Bridewell, savouring the brittle snap of your newly purchased stockings inside battered shoes. They cost 2 pennies at Newgate Market just after sunrise. Coarse wool that itches faintly, true, but they armour toes against grit and broken tile. Each step feels like a pledge to yourself. Progress, however threadbare, is progress. Bridewell's yard greets you with the familiar clamour, though this morning a clerk with parchment trimmed thin as onion skin meets the workers at the gate. Names for the register, he calls. Her Majesty's paymasters require counting. You scrawl another lopsided X, but pride flutters. You now know where to place it, how to cross the indelible line of the B in Bridewell, so the ledger reads clean. The overseer assigns you to tar cauldron duty, ladling thick black pitch into wooden buckets hoisted to the roofers above. The smell is sharp, piney, and oddly musical. Each bubbling plop reminds you of a bass drum in some slow subterranean march. Sun climbs, pitch thins, and you slip into that curious trance where labor becomes pulse and pulse becomes prayer. Around you, banter weaves, talk of a comet, bright as God's discarded quill, spotted over Sussex. Jest about a travelling tooth puller whose cart horse bolted, stopping only when it reached the city ditch, presumably after hearing distant screams and recognizing kinship. At noon, break, bread, onion, and a ladle of green peas pottage enlivened with mint tips plucked from the yard's scruffy border. A red-haired farrier, taking shade beside you, laments the rise in iron prices since Swedish ore shipments slowed. Cost of a horseshoe's near a half-groat, he mutters, wiping sweat on his sleeve. You listen, sipping small beer, safer than river water, and cheaper than the physic required after drinking river water, and file the fact away with all the other price points that now populate your inner ledger. Cheese at 3, halfpence the wedge, eggs a farthing apiece, a wool cap 9p if lined, 6 if not. London is an abacus. Survival demands constant sums. Clouds gather in towering battlements just as the overseer cries knock off. You collect your groat, 8p total savings now, and rest the coin on your tongue for a heartbeat, tasting metal and victory. Legs quiver on the first steps beyond the yard. Tar speckles freckle your forearms like night stars. You decide to walk gently, letting each muscle unfurl. Eastward, Ludgate draws you beneath its arch, portal to the bookish precinct of St. Paul's. Under the cathedral's shadow, stationers spread patched cloth across flagstones and display pamphlets pinned with thimble-sized rocks. One broadsheet, fresh as baker's steam, bears the headline, Plague in York, Mayor advises flight for health. A nervous flicker passes through the crowd, yet shoppers keep thumbing chapbooks. A coney pie vendor calls 2 for a penny, as though contagion were a distant rumour floating on northern winds, not tomorrow's cough. You press coins tighter in pocket, 8p a slender moat against catastrophe. Past the churchyard, a narrow wind leads to the Greyfriars cloister, where several beguines, semi-religious women living by charity and needlework, drape linens to dry on cords strung between apple trees. One hums a lullaby in French so soft it barely wrinkles the air. You watch a moment, recognizing neither the melody nor the ease with which she fingers the cloth, smoothing each hem as though coaxing stories woven into flax. The scene is a hush inside the city's drumbeat, and you tip your cap in thanks to beauty, silent though it remains. Back on Newgate Street, the smell of sweetmeats hooks your nostrils. A confectioner stirs a pan of almond milk, honey and rice, fructus, soon to be cut into diamond slabs and dusted with sugar so precious each pinch costs a labourer's hour. You bargain for only the merest offcut, paying a farthing and letting the grainy sweetness dissolve slow as moonlight on your tongue. It feels like treason against your careful winnings, yet delight too has wages and needs paying, or it rebels later in the heart. A murmuration of talk rolls past, voices pointing south. You follow their current toward the river, to the royal barge house, where rumour says a procession approaches. Queen Elizabeth herself, returning from Whitehall to Greenwich Palace, sails blazing with cloth of gold, musicians braying cornets bright enough to wake oysters on the riverbed. You claim a bollard near the slip, elbow to elbow with cloth workers, laundresses, even a black-robed doctor fanning himself with his hat. Minutes stretch until finally masts appear, pennants streaming Tudor green and white. Rowers, 80 strong in crimson jerkins, pull oars in perfect cadence. Hammer strokes of sun flash off wet wood and gild everything the boat passes. Up on the high-canopied poop deck stands Elizabeth, slender, armour-stiff bodice of silver tissue, red wig piled like midsummer flame, a smile both shy and sovereign. You glimpse only the arc of her profile, yet the crowd erupts in a murmur shy of cheering. Proper decorum tempers volume, but reverence saturates every exhale. For a heartbeat, London melts. Class, hunger, and tar stains kneel invisible beneath the shared astonishment of proximity to power. Then the barge slips downstream, majesty vanishing into river glare. Conversation floods back, louder now, as though massed lungs waited for the Queen's wake to breathe. You turn inland, lighter despite the ache beginning behind knees. Past Candlewick Street, you spot a healer's booth, sheltered by awning-striped nettle green and milk white. Jars of dried rosemary, lavender, and powdered iris line a shelf. A wooden placard proclaims, "Cures for head melancholy, rheum, and toothache." The healer, a sober-eyed woman of perhaps 30, offers a sample. Thyme steeped in cider vinegar for sore muscles. You dab it where pitch spatters raise heat, and relief prickles like frost melting under dawn. She charges only a smile. Kindness, the rarest coin, you pocket gratefully. Sun tilts into late afternoon. Church wardens trim rushes in St. Benet's nave, preparing for evensong. You slip inside, curiosity more than piety, to sit where cool stone leeches heat from overworked limbs. Choir boys gather, smoothing surplices still 2 sizes large for growing bones. When they break into the Magnificat, high voices rise like swallows spiraling round a bell tower. Sound lifts roof beams that carpenters built a century past to cradle precisely this hush. You do not follow Latin lyrics, but cadence alone unknots something quiet in your chest. Back outside, you consider supper. Coins weigh decisions. 8p would buy a cot in a decent room, plus bread, cheese, maybe a relic of salted herring, or buy an education in risk at dice and the promise, seldom kept, of doubling fortunes. Prudence wins. You head toward Pie Corner, where taverns spill amber lamplight over benches set beneath bow windows. At the Pomegranate, a chalkboard lists hot venison stew, 1 penny per trencher. Temptation again, yet you recall the creeping ruin of waste. You order half portion, sliding a bright penny across the counter. The stew arrives thick with carrot, turnip, and a scant handful of raisins swollen into tawny gems. Meat, tender as confession, transports your thoughts to deep forests you've never seen. Somewhere stags bound free of tariff or tally. You mop bowl clean with barley bread, count remaining purse, 7p. Contentment visits, settles like a shawl over shoulders. Night approaches on cat paws. East wind snuffs several lanterns in one sly gust. Keepers relight them with oiled paper tapers. At Cornhill Conduit, apprentices jostle, faces streaked with soot from the day's forge or bakery, each boasting how high his guild's bonfire will blaze tomorrow. "Our cooperage threw in 3 barrels last year," claims one. "This year it'll be 5, and a wheelbarrow." Friendly brag, but aldermen watch such conflagrations warily. City ordinances forbid fires taller than 5 carts, for fear sparks leap roofs. The apprentices grin. Limits are merely starting lines. Home tonight is again the dormitory, a safe harbour you now navigate without map. The matron greets you with lavender dab and a passing remark. You smell of tar and thyme, industrious and prudent. St. Thomas would approve. Her compliment lingers sweetly. In the loft, a different corner lies vacant, away from leaky shingles. You spread cloak, which still whispers riverside fog across its wool, and lie on your back. Through a knothole near the roof ridge, you spy a squeeze of sky. Clouds like hand-torn linen drift under a waxing half-moon. Somewhere beyond that silvery rind, centuries turn, steam railways whistle, airships sigh. But here, now, London breathes by lantern glow and human sweat. Sleep pulls gently, yet you hold the edge, listening to familiar chorus. Creak of beams, slow heave of veteran snores, distant rattle of a cart trundling toward Billingsgate, loaded with tomorrow's herring. A thought surfaces, nearly startled at its own courage. You have lasted more than a day. Hunger never tipped to pain. No constable's brand scorched your flesh. Plague skirts the north, but your lungs draw easy. You adjust blanket, feeling straw's soft rustle, appreciate the movement, and taste a last memory of time on your skin. Pulse settles, each beat a fading footstep down Fleet Alley. And here, dear traveller, in the hush between heartbeats of a city half lit by tallow and half lit by hopes, let the world gently dim. Tomorrow's bonfires will crackle, guild pipes will keen, and children will chase spinning embers beneath the same unhurried moon. But those bright chores can wait. For now, surrender your thoughts to darkness as soft as black silk. Let muscles unclasp like shutters flung wide to the night breeze. Feel the straw mold to shoulders, the blanket warm as late harvest wool. The room's many breathings weave a cradle of ordinary miracles about you. Should our quiet rambles through Tudor streets have pleased your slumbering spirit, do remember, sometime after waking, to tap that little like or subscribe, so Bedtime Historica may keep the embers glowing and the quills scratching, but that, like all gentle choices, can idle until dawn's kinder light. For this moment, float free of cobbles and coin, drift downstream with the black glass Thames into dream country where no river stinks and every pie is hot. Breathe slow and slower still. Day's ledger is balanced, night's balm is yours. Good night, dear listener. Good night.